Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. I love deadheading. It's one of those gentle, meditative jobs. By taking a spent flower and cutting right back to the next leaf, stem or bud, you're stimulating side growth, which will carry more flowers. And if you deadhead regularly, you will extend your flowering season of the roses by weeks. But the roses have had a tough time this year. Last year and the year before, they were fabulous because we had nice hot summers. This year, certainly here at Longmeadow, we've had rain, we've had wind, it's been cold, it's been humid, and roses hate all that. And one of the side effects has been balling. Now, you get balling, particularly on roses that have a mass of petals. The simpler the flower, the less likely it is to happen. But what it looks like is an acorn shape with the flower never opening because it's wrapped up in a dirty brown shell of petals. And those petals have got saturated with water, then they've dried out, and they've stiffened as a result. And that holds the rest of the petals in a vice-like grip. Now, sometimes, if you just gently pull away those brown outer petals, the flower will open out. Yes, can you see that? By gently teasing it, there is a lovely rose. I love this gentle attention to detail. And although the weather hasn't been good for them, this is, after all, the season of the rose. On today's programme, Adam is in Leicestershire to help a couple transform some tricky areas in their garden.
Instantly, that'll give us height at the back of this border, but the white really pops in the dark space.
And gets a surprise helper. Nick has a close encounter with one of the biggest problems that many gardeners are having to deal with, the box tree caterpillar.
What you see here is leaves that have been eaten, and where there is webbing, the caterpillar tends to be hiding.
And I shall be tidying up the spring garden, ready for a quiet summer, and planting out my squashes and pumpkins. Come on. Good girl, this way. No. The hostas are really fulsome at the moment and are completely untroubled by slugs and snails. They are looking absolutely fantastic. But the pond has been pretty much left to its own devices this year. And that's a trend, really, that I'm encouraging in this area. And what this means is we now have masses of frogs, lots of newts. This morning I saw a grass snake slide off the edge down into the water, one about that big. We have more bats over the water. And of course we have dragonflies and damselflies too. And this all adds to the health of the garden as well as being a delight. And if you want to encourage wildlife, then a pond of some sort is absolutely essential. But that doesn't mean to say that it can't and shouldn't look good. And I want to add a Japanese iris, Iris insata, sometimes known as Iris camphorii. It doesn't look nearly so dramatic now, but they have elegant foliage and beautiful flowers. And there are two things that they absolutely must have. One is damp. If your soil is sandy or chalky or free draining, you really are going to have to beef it up with plenty of manure. The other thing is they do like acidic soil. Now I'm going to plant a little group in a gap in the border, and the other three, I'm going to submerge them in the shallows. Now, for the ones in the shallows, I've got here an aquatic basket. You can buy these from a garden centre, and they've got a fine mesh of holes, which means the water flows in and out, but the soil doesn't. And this is a variety called Pink Frost. It has a gentle pink flower, touched with white. I'm simply going to take these out of their pot and transfer them. I don't need to add any extra soil. If you are using soil in a pond, it wants to be low in nutrients. Normal garden subsoil is absolutely fine, or you can buy a special aquatic compost. But if there are too many nutrients, all that will do is feed the duckweed and the algae. And now I'm going to push that in, and then just by forcing it into the gap, these should stay firmly in the pot. There we go. Okay, the next step is to get in the water. This is always the tricky bit because you never quite know what's underfoot. And I want to put this in the shallowest part that I can find. So I'm looking to place this down just in the water, not too submerged, but I can't leave it in the water over winter because if this freezes over, then they won't like that at all. So I'll come and collect it round about the end of October and just put it somewhere sheltered where it can stay damp and yet not frozen solid until spring comes round again. But the other lot, I will be able to leave in the ground because I can mulch them and protect them. This is another variety called Kumo no Obi, and it has lovely deep purple flowers. And I want to plant them as a little group in a space which has been made by taking out one of the matuccia, the ostrich ferns. I'm actually going to take this camassia out. Camassias are lovely, but they're very slow to die back, and their leaves are quite bulky. Camassias are one of the very few bulbs, along with snowdrops and fritillaries, that like actively damp soil. And you can see this one camassia has developed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bulbs. So that will give me a hit of intense, rich purple in amongst the smoky blues of the Hosta Sibodiana. Now, absolutely essential to give these a really good soak now and not let them dry out. So if it doesn't rain for about 3 or 4 days, give them a soak. Now, I do garden this area around the pond, what we call the damp garden, very carefully. But at the same time, over the years, it has become looser and freer and better for wildlife, and I'm very happy with that process. But Arit has been to visit a garden where they have taken that a whole stage further.
I'm in Suffolk, where the notion of a garden has been stretched. And to find the beauty in this garden, you need to have an open mind. Unmown grass, weeds and straggly plants, this isn't your average garden. It's a place where wildlife feels quite at home, and it's an approach that has recently come to be known as rewilding. The term rewilding was coined in conservation to mean the reintroduction of natural plant species and wildlife into areas where it may have disappeared. This concept is now being brought into how we can manage our gardens to allow the natural process of growth and decay to happen around us. 10 years ago, the owner, Miranda Kendall, brought in gardener Brian Skilton. The brief was that he should let his imagination run wild. He took her at her word and developed a garden in which standard border plants would rub shoulders with wild ones. Brian, tell me about your ethos behind this garden.
It's changed over the years. We started off fairly traditional, but we've sort of pushed the boundaries and we've allowed nature to start to take reign.
It is a quite literal pushing of boundaries, isn't it?
Yes, literally. I mean, I used to edge all the borders, and now it's difficult to tell where the border starts and nature's taken over.
In a usual garden, though, we can bring wildlife in, but what exactly is it that you're doing differently here?
Well, we've allowed nature to come in on its own, and I mean, the garden's actually set within an organic farm. The owners are very environmentally friendly, and we've carried that philosophy into the garden. And because we were surrounded by nature anyway, it comes into the garden, literally. Seeds come in, animals come in, insects come in. We've become a self-contained unit.
As we move away from the house, the garden gets wilder as plants and what we think of as weeds run riot.
To the uninitiated, it would look like a mess, perhaps, but it's actually a haven. I'd say about a third of the plants that you see in front of you were planted. A lot of the other stuff has come in on its own. These ornamental grasses, obviously, I did plant. This year in particular, I noticed a lot of ladybirds were still clinging on to the flowers. So I've decided to leave them much longer this year. But when I do cut them, anything that is cut, I do leave rather than obsessively tidying things up.
Yeah.
Because you just don't know what's underneath all of this material.
In terms of self-seeding, do you take some of the self-seeders out?
If it gets a bit overcrowded, yes, I might tinker here and there, but very, very little maintenance on this bed, actually.
There's a structure to this, you know, you've got the upright of the miscanthus and all the leaf textures adds into that design element, really. It's a new way of looking at space. The mown paths and different lawn heights look fab, don't they?
I find mowing at different lengths encourages different wildflowers at different times of year. And I actually introduced yellow rattle into this area, and that suppressed the grass to allow the wildflowers to come through a lot stronger.
And all the little flowers are just sitting at that little bobbing height mode, which is much more interesting than lawn, just having elements like this.
Yeah, well, it's seeing beauty in something that you might otherwise take for granted.
Every corner you turn, Brian's improvised with materials he's found in the garden. Fallen branches make a wildlife border, while cut logs have been made into a bird bath. This is the root system of an upturned oak tree, but Brian's left it in situ because his philosophy is that there can be more life coming out of this now it's decaying, and it's created another wonderful habitat. But there's more. It's not just the tree roots, it's the whole tree that he's left in this garden. The special thing about this space is that Brian's not only paid attention to the larger features of the garden, he's just as interested in the smaller details.
I think this little corner is rather beautiful. It's got an oak tree, which I have been topiarising a little bit.
Yeah.
Ivy, wild garlic.
Ordinarily, if that was in a small space, that's a weed, take it out. But I think what you've shown here is that they're plants that just actually look wonderful altogether.
It's only a couple of square metres here. You could do the same at home.
Yeah. I love it, but I wonder how the owner, Miranda, feels about her rewilded garden.
We actually find beauty in all of the greenery, the paths, the different spaces, the different habitats. It has taken a while for us to reach that point. Sometimes over the years I've said to Brian, do you think we should be doing that? That seems to be going a bit far. And then he will talk me through it and I'll realise that he's right and I'm wrong. I've really, really come to enjoy it and find it a very calm space.
What is it about this garden that works? Well, I think it's about a gardener like Brian who is sensitive to the nature around him. But this garden really works because it's driven by nature. If we were able to garden like this in our own spaces, it would certainly make us feel freer and it would connect us to the wider environment.
I know that some people will find the whole idea of that quite challenging, and it does, as Eric pointed out, take on and challenge the idea of what is a garden in the first place. Well, I think the best solution is go along if you can and see for yourself. The garden is part of the National Garden Scheme, and if you go to our website, you can get all the details of when it's open. Now, introducing wildlife into the garden is generally agreed to be both good for wildlife and good for us. And you don't have to let your garden completely go in order to do that. There are a few very simple things that will make a big difference. Have a bit of water, have a pond if you possibly can, some long grass, plenty of cover, don't be too tidy, and let seeds and berries form as food. But some seeds have to be controlled. Now, this is all cow parsley. I absolutely love cow parsley. There is almost nothing I would rather share springtime with. But you can see, look around you, the spring garden is enveloped in it and dominated by it. And now that it's finished, what I'm doing is pulling up all these plants so that I can see how things are beneath them. Now you can see that we've got a hardy geranium, Andressii. When the flowers start to really go over, then I can cut that back hard and it will regrow. Now, in terms of cutting back, some plants are good to cut back now and some not. And we certainly don't cut back healthy leaves of hellebores. Leave them, and in fact, they shouldn't be cut back until sort of November, December time at the earliest. With early flowering herbaceous perennials like Pulmonaria, it's a really good idea to cut those back now. That lets light and air in, and they will regrow and be all the healthier for it. All this material can be composted and will work its way back into the garden in due course to make it richer and everything grow better. But if I just left that as a heap, all the foliage would rot down quite quickly, but the stems, which are quite woody, would take much longer. So if you can shred it, that's ideal. You can try mowing it or just chop it up. Anything to break it down will help the compost hugely. Now, it doesn't matter how long you garden and how much you think you know, there's always more to learn, and it's always good to get advice and help. And a few weeks ago, I did say that if any of you would like our team to help you out in your garden, then contact us. And Ruth Guntrip and Nick Hook did just that. They've got a new house and garden in Leicestershire, and they don't really know how to tackle it.
You know, when we take on a new house or a new garden, I think we can go one of two ways. We either get overexcited, we go out into that garden, we cut things back, we dig things out. And doing that, you can really end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Or the other effect is we open the patio doors, everything feels overwhelming, and just get to understand that garden. Anyway, I've come here today just to meet... Anyway, I'll be back in a second, just bear with me, sorry. What are you doing here?
What are you doing here?
I'm here to do a garden.
So am I, yeah. Monty sent me.
What's he sent you for? You better come in.
So you need some help, don't you?
Does he think I can't cope or what?
Well, probably.
Seeing as Joe has turned up, we might as well make use of him. Nick and Ruth moved into their house with a 30-metre long garden a year ago, but haven't quite worked out what they want to do with it. Right, guys, you've now got two of us for a day, which is a nice surprise, I think. How can we help you?
There's lots of things towards the back that it's just all overgrown. Everything's just gone a bit mad.
A lot of people will be looking at your garden thinking, it looks fantastic. So what do you think is lacking?
I think it definitely needs some more colour in there. And for me, the terrace is such a great opportunity, but at the moment it's not looking very special at all.
It's always interesting to know when you sort of take on a garden is how much time you guys have actually got to look after it.
we're planning to get married in August, so we have no time at the weekends. It's probably an hour here and there just to keep on top of things. But
Get quite a lot done in that time, so no, I think that's...
I could get a lot done in that time.
I'll get more done, obviously, but... Well, it's a bit like being at school, you want to pick teams.
It's not competition, Adam.
Is it not?
No.
Yeah,
Well, you know,
it will be a competition.
We'll work into one. I thought maybe me and Ruth just go and check out the end bit, shall
Brilliant.
we? And we'll leave you two to do whatever you've got to do.
Carry on.
Wow, what a view! But it does definitely fizzle out.
Yes, definitely.
There's not a lot going on here.
No, absolutely. And it'd be great to really make the most of this view and create a lovely space.
How do you want it to feel?
Potentially quite creative. I really love writing in my spare time. I have written a novel. Days like this, why not come down and do a little bit of writing?
And is there a particular style that you're looking for in this area?
Well, we're quite inspired by the Scandi theme, just to add a bit more of sort of modern tones and textures to it.
Well, with that in mind, the boundaries are the first thing we really need to tackle. And I've got some dark black stain with me. How do you feel about that?
Okay, very interesting.
I mean, it's quite daring, and some people might not go for it, but actually it can be incredibly effective.
Well, Joe is being creative with that paint. I'm going to take a look at another dark corner of the garden. It's an overgrown, shady spot that needs a little bit of attention.
So, Nick, am I right in thinking you've got a little bit more than just a general interest in this gardening lark?
absolutely, yeah, I'm an engineer by trade, but in my spare time, I'm actually studying my RHS qualification. So
Fantastic. I mean, shady. Dry shade is definitely one of the biggest problems that people have in gardens. So if we get in there, get stuck in, and I'll just chat through some ideas as we're going.
super
All
duper.
right?
Yep.
Come on. If you look at what the shrubs are doing, especially that choice here at the front there, it's really looking for the light. Yeah, it wants more light than what it's getting. And you look above, the canopy's quite heavy, isn't it, in the Acer? But if you look really closely, there's some dead timber in there. So I would go up into this tree and really start to thin it out. That will let more light into here, and that'll help that choice here out.
Absolutely.
And then some of the other shrubs, people just rip them out, but we could regenerate it. All you start to do is just actually find a little bud and just cut it hard back, and you'll end up with a decent shrub. All right?
Super.
And just another tip while we're here, is just bringing in lighter colours. So if I grab this Digitalis, instantly that'll give us height at the back of this border, but it will really lift the area, you know, so the white really pops in the dark space. So I'm going to leave you with that, 'cause
Super.
that'll keep you busy for the weekend, but we better go and get that back area done for you. That looks good, mate.
It looks all right, doesn't it?
Straight away, though, it feels totally different, doesn't it?
I know. Dug up a few slabs, and actually the soil's not too bad underneath. There's not loads of concrete or hardcore, so we could think about planting into this as well.
So if we get stuff laid out, work out where we want to put it, and then
Yeah.
we can move it out of the way and start to lift the slabs.
Well, I'll do. I'll design a new place here. How about that?
We'll start like that, shall we? We'll see how it goes. Go on then, you take your
They're nice,
beloved
aren't they?
boots. They are
They're
beautiful.
really nice. Right.
What are you thinking, mate?
Well, I'm thinking some sort of structure here.
Yeah.
That could be nicely clipped.
What, just in fours or something?
Yeah, fours would be good.
Yeah,
Sort of
we'll
a bit
see.
more impactful.
Sorbus.
Yeah.
I reckon, I mean, that's a big beast, that eucalyptus.
Yeah.
If we could maybe just put something
Right on the edge.
right on the edge.
And also to give a bit of privacy. yeah.
Exactly, blocks that one out there, but also brings this tree down into the garden. And I think as well, this is quite exposed, this space.
Yeah.
So maybe if they do want a little bit of dappled shade, that would just provide it. And then maybe on that side, we keep that nice and open. Tied that back in, it's that fence.
Yeah, Paracantha.
Great for wildlife, fantastic flower.
Brilliant. Look at the greens already against the black.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's great, isn't it?
Get a couple more of these, I've got an idea.
Yeah, go on.
So what about we put two up on the higher level, two on the lower level, and create like a buttress holding it together?
I really like that. I'm glad I had that idea.
Yeah, I thought it might be yours.
It will really break up the wall and sort of connect the two areas. And if it was nicely clipped, it'll give it that Scandi look. We are agreeing on things, Adam. Well, hang on, something's going to happen.
Not quite
in a minute.
right, is it? It's not quite right.
The scent is just going to be contained within this space beautifully.
Well, I suspect they'll work something out between them. They've got enough Chelsea gold medals between them. Anyway, we will be rejoining them and seeing the result of their work a little bit later on. Now, this hedge came out to here a year or two back, and we cut it right back. And that did expose a bare patch of soil at its base. So we moved some ferns, primulas, and put some narcissi in it. And now is a really good time to divide primulas. And when you have a plant like that, actually you can divide that up into a number of different plants. So if I just gently with my hand ease it apart like that, there's one, and I can get another one like that, and even another one there. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plants from that one clump. And so if I plant this up now, and I just pop it in the ground, not only will this make the border look better, it's a very good way of increasing your stock for absolutely no expense at all. To make a garden look really good, you do need quantity as much as quality. And by far the best, the most practical, and certainly the cheapest way of getting volume is to grow them yourself. Grow from seed, take cuttings, or, as with these primulas, simply divide them. Now, still to come on today's programme. Nick looks at the advances being made to combat the dreaded box tree caterpillar.
This one smells of basically caterpillar excrement. Fancy a sniff?
OK, let's give it a go.
But first we join Mark, who gives us tips and tools on how he manages to create his own lovely garden.
I've been gardening for 16 years in a wheelchair. I've changed the layout of the garden to suit me, and I found some really great tools to make gardening so much easier. Before I even start thinking about gardening, I get all my tools together. Now, I found this wonderful trolley online, and it means I can keep all of my tools in one place without having to keep going backwards and forwards to the shed. If you've got a box and not a trolley, that's just as good. Put all your tools in it, you can carry it around with you, and they're there just when you need them. If you have the space, an ideal width for a wheelchair-friendly path is between 100 and 120 centimetres. And I find a raised edge means my wheels don't end up in the borders. I have large wheels, so gravel isn't a problem for me. But if you have a manual wheelchair, then self-binding gravel or resin-bound gravel are good alternatives. Tarmac would also work and be a much cheaper option, and surprisingly, comes in many colours. I've got a real love-hate relationship with roses. My grandmother used to have roses in abundance in her garden, and as a kid we used to have to go and deadhead and pick up all those grotty leaves every single weekend. But as a tribute to her, I suppose, I've got this lovely rose border, and it goes from dark pinks to pale pinks. I've got the most gorgeous Princess Anne, and the scent is absolutely divine. But of course, some of these flowers have now gone over, so how do I prune them? Well, some really nifty tools. This is brilliant. It's a long-handled pruner, and something which you wouldn't really associate with gardening is actually one of these pickers. You normally see these in the street where people are picking up litter, but in the garden they're brilliant, because what you can actually do is you can get right in there and cut them with great ease. Obviously, there are some roses that I can reach, and a great tool for that are these tiny little snips. It's got this little hook on it. This sits comfortably in the hand, and it means you don't drop them. And then you just literally go in and cut. all of you will probably have noticed that my hedge needs a really good trim. So let me just put these away and I'll show you a tool that's really good for the job. Now these, believe me, are incredibly light. When you're going around the garden centre, it's really important to hold the tools and feel them. If they're too heavy after walking around, they're going to be too heavy when you're in your garden. But the really good thing about them also is that they've got these really long handles and long blades. So it means you don't have to bend so much or lean so much in order to cut your hedge. You can literally just go in and cut away. So these are my white borders. I really love them. I've got the wonderful Viburnum opulus roseum, and then oxeye daisies, which will flower for months on end. But the great thing about them is that they're in this raised bed, 3 sleepers high, which is a perfect height for me, so I can still maintain this garden and manage it myself. But a really good tip is to plant densely. I do this throughout the whole of my garden, and by doing so, you're actually cutting out the light so that those pesky weeds cannot grow. One of my favourite things to do in the garden is planting. I love it because I love playing with textures and colour and introducing new plants into new spaces. This is a really handy tool. It has the handle and these different attachments that you can add. I can then go right into the soil and dig my hole ready for my plants. And then it's ready to put the dahlia in. So this is Dahlia Totally Tangerine. And just look at the way that it picks up the pink of the geranium and the orange of the geum. It's just a perfect match. And if you look on the reverse of the petal, it's also got a nice pink hue to it as well. Turn it upside down, tap the bottom, and out it comes. And just look at the root system. It's just raring to go. Gently tease out those roots, and then you're ready to place it into the hole. Take a grabber, pull it around the base of the plant, then you can just lower it down into the hole with ease. So then you take the pot that the dahlia came in, scoop the soil back in around the plant and firm that soil into the ground. And job done. Even though being in a wheelchair has had a massive impact on me, it's actually been a positive one. I now see a garden from a new perspective. And because I've found tools that have enabled me to continue gardening, I'm out here more than ever.
That does show that you can garden. If there is a will, there is a way, whatever the limitations you may have to deal with. And actually nowadays, there are an awful lot of really good bits of kit and tools that you will find will be just right for you in your position. And Mark's garden looks absolutely lovely. Now, the weather at the moment isn't very lovely, but the foxgloves are relishing it. They like these rather overcast, damp conditions. And the white ones in particular, maybe it's because it's been gloomy, they've shone out. Now, what about this one here? This whopper with its sort of junior collection underneath must be 8-9 foot tall and still growing. This construction is intended to support my squash plants this year. It's actually not finished. I've got a little bit more to do. In past years, I've grown them up tripods of these really stout posts. But this year, I thought I'd build a lattice. that they could grow up. So I've got these in place, I've got the crossbars, I've tied on those uprights. I now want to get the parallel horizontal bars in. The point of this is to provide a structure for the tendrils of the squash to climb onto. And squashes are heavy. So bamboo supports or lightweight canes just simply aren't going to do the job. It's a way of growing quite a large vegetable, one that takes up a lot of space in a limited situation. You do not need a big garden or an allotment to do this. Now, obviously, for the biggest pumpkins, this doesn't work. It's got to be for relatively small ones that enjoy climbing. The really big ones will grow laterally across the ground. Well, that's the DIY completed. Now for some planting. These are all the same variety. It's called Yuchiki Kuri. And it is the shape of an onion that is particularly good as a climber. Not too big and are delicious to eat. If you haven't sown any pumpkin seeds yet, it's not too late, because pumpkins and squashes are like warm nights if they're going to grow. So if you put some seed in the ground now, put 2 where you want them to grow, and if they both germinate, take out the weaker of the 2. Put them somewhere with lots of sunshine, the richest soil you've got, and they should grow fast. Because I'm growing them vertically, I can fit much more into a small space, because that space will be spread across this vertical pane, and light and sun will be able to get at them. Right, they're planted, and the important thing is to water these in well. They really are greedy, thirsty plants. Although they've got such voracious appetites, actually squashes of all kinds are pretty trouble-free. They can get powdery mildew, but that's usually because they're too dry. Other than that, they'll just grow. But there are other plants that I love that have had a tough time of late. Box, for example, which was a mainstay of the garden here at Longmeadow, was no trouble at all, and then box blight appeared, and it's had a devastating effect. But there seems to be another problem which might even be worse, which is box tree caterpillar. And Nick went along to Ham House in Richmond, because there they're trying all kinds of different methods of combating this particular problem.
Commonly known as box, Buxus is a true stalwart in British gardens. It's a versatile plant which can work in spaces both big and small, from large practical hedges through to 17th century inspired gardens like this one. But it's a plant that's seriously in the wars. First came box blight, which is a devastating fungus which causes the leaves to turn brown and the growing tips to shrivel. And then this arrived, the box tree caterpillar. And I, like so many other gardeners, know the absolute devastation this little beastie can cause. Box tree caterpillars are active from March to October. Female box moths lay their eggs on the underside of box leaves, and once these hatch, the caterpillars rapidly feed on leaves, often causing almost complete defoliation of the plant. Today, it's one of the top garden pests in the UK. One of many gardeners constantly battling it is Rosie Files at Ham House in Richmond.
Oh, Rosie, this is devastating.
It is, and we have not done one thing to this box to control the caterpillar in 2 years of having it. So what you see here is leaves that have been eaten, and then some webbing. And where there is webbing, the caterpillar tends to be hiding in leaves.
I mean, it has an interesting life cycle, doesn't it? I think it's 3 times in a year it will regenerate.
Last year here 4. And I think that was to do with the hot weather. So you have to be vigilant, you have to be looking for the signs, and after a while you do get kind of used to crawling around your box and having a proper look, and we're very lucky, or not so lucky, to find one.
I mean, the devastation can be extraordinary. I first noticed it in 2014 in Chelsea. I was trying to hand pick them off, take them off the box plants. Are your team doing that? Is it worth it?
I think it's realistic in a domestic setting. If you've got a very prized area of box, it is a realistic thing to do. But bear in mind, you have to spot the signs of the caterpillar appearing first.
That tends to be about sort of May time?
Depends on the weather, but I think mid-May is a good time to start looking for the moth, and there are various tools that you can use to do that.
Rosie's chosen to leave the problem uncontrolled in the kitchen garden and plans to replace the box hedging here. In other areas, once caterpillars are sighted, they're targeted with a biological spray. To tackle the moth, she's using various methods with the help of Chris Poole, the chairman of the European Boxwood and Topiary Society. Tell me, Chris, what's your particular approach here to dealing with the problem? I know it's multi-stranded.
Yeah, first thing though is you need to know whether you've got the caterpillar or the moth. And let's start with the moth. To do that, you use one of these things, a pheromone trap, easily available online. And the pheromones come in a variety of different styles, sticky gels, or these new ones, which if I open this one up.
And so these would lure in the moth, it would get stuck and then tell you that they're present?
Yeah, basically it smells of lady moth, and the male moths will go for it. And this one lasts a whole season. From May through to October, that will keep the male moths coming for your trap.
So it's the females that are laying the eggs, which cause the caterpillars and the problem. So why are you trapping the males?
Yeah, females are laying around 700 eggs each. And why are we catching the males? Well, the males come out first from the eggs. And there are twice as many males as there are females, just to make sure the action happens.
So they really are the indication that the problem's about to occur?
Yeah.
Recently, Chris and his team have been trialling unique new ways to tackle box tree caterpillar, which could prove even more effective.
We were contacted by a German company who have a deterrent which should stop the female moths laying their eggs, and we've got some in the hedge here. In one of these pouches that is gas permeable, and this one smells of basically caterpillar excrement. Fancy a sniff?
Okay, let's give it a go. Okay.
It's actually doesn't smell. It could be a lot worse.
Yeah.
We've got a different flavour, or in this case, really different smell, doing the same sort of thing of deterring the female moth.
Okay.
What does that one smell of?
It's very herby.
It is thyme. So what they found was that the female moths were repelled by the smell of thyme.
And this is the thymol that's in thyme, the sort of active compound?
Absolutely. And if you just grow thyme next to your box, I'm afraid that's not a strong enough concentration of it. This is much more concentrated, and it should, fingers crossed, deter the moths.
I mean, what's fascinating for me is obviously this is extracted or a concentrated form of thyme. And actually, thymol is a biocide, so it kills all living organisms, yet we manage to eat it somehow. In small doses, it doesn't hurt us. But fascinating that it can be used in this way. So this has got a distinctly nicer smell than the other product.
Certainly better than the poo.
Another method that could soon be available in the UK is the use of parasitic microwasps. They lay their eggs inside the egg sacs of a box moth. Once the wasp eggs hatch, they eat the eggs of the moth. So it breaks the life cycle.
It breaks the life cycle. Hopefully next year, we'll get the licence in the UK to import these things from the Drôme region in France. They arrive in the post, and inside you'll have the microscopic wasps. Dead easy to use. Just hook it onto a branch of the box tree, and if you get the timing right, you should end up with no caterpillars.
Despite the devastating effect of this pest in the UK, the range of potential treatments means there's real hope for box in our gardens in the future.
Although we've certainly had our problems with box blight, box caterpillar hasn't yet arrived at Longmeadow, and I hope it never does. It's mostly confined to London and the southeast and has been devastating there. But if you live outside that area and you spot a caterpillar, you could let the RHS know, because they are monitoring its progress. And if you go to our website, you'll see the links to follow and be able to contact them. Now, although we've had a miserable summer for gardeners, the soft fruit has loved this weather. By and large, mild, damp, cool summers are perfect for growing good soft fruit. And here they are all flourishing. We've got black currants, not yet ripe, but they're certainly ripening up. Plenty of currants there. There is a little bit of blistering on the leaves. What you notice on black currants, red currants and white currants quite often are the leaves puckering and blistering and very often turning quite a sort of angry red where there are scars. This is because on the underside you will find little tiny aphids eating it. It does no harm to the plant, certainly doesn't affect the crop, doesn't look great, but is nothing to worry about. The raspberries are enjoying this summer much more than last year, which was far too hot and dry for them. But best of all are the gooseberries. Have a look at this. They're very, very prickly. But look at that. And this is just a side shoot. These are cordon gooseberries, growing slightly unrestrainedly, but absolutely laden down with fruit. Now, I don't want those to sit on the ground, so I do need to tie them up to protect the fruit from slugs and snails. The way to test if a gooseberry is ripe is just give it a squeeze. If it's rock hard, then it's not ready, but worth checking up on practically on a daily basis from now on. I think the thing I love most about growing things as a cordon is just how much fruit you get in a really limited space. There is no reason that you shouldn't grow soft fruit just because you've got a small garden, because gooseberries, red currants, raspberries, they all lend themselves to growing in this way. It can be on wires, it can be against a fence or a wall. And you get masses of fruit and that incredible experience of fresh, soft fruit. It is so satisfying. Now, earlier on, we saw Adam and Joe visit Ruth and Nick in Leicestershire to help them transform their garden into a space that worked for them and also give them some guidance. Well, they got the groundwork in and they've started the project. Now we rejoin them as they start to do the good bit, the planting.
Having decided on the overall design, it's time to lift the paving and dig out for the new planting areas.
We're going to take out those pockets for planting back to soil and introduce topsoil with a lot of organic matter.
Nick and Ruth don't like the hedge at the back, which is messy and half dead. So we've decided to take it out to make the most of the view beyond. It's illegal to cut down hedges with nests or birds in them, and advice is to observe a hedge from a distance over weeks to be sure. That's been done here, and as there are no birds or nests here, we can safely remove it.
Just seeing from coming up here, it already makes such a big difference. You're right, you can keep going.
She'll go in a minute.
All right then.
All done.
This is what we call an organic fluids design. Now this hedge is out, this little block wall is more prominent and it's obscuring the view. So the decision is it's going to go. And it goes very easily too.
You went along there, you knocked them little breeze blocks off. You even made that look like it was hard work.
The breeze blocks are the pièce de résistance. Nick, the hedge looks great. It's so much better with it out, isn't it?
Oh, it really is, but it wasn't easy to do.
No, it was for me, because I just watched you do it.
Not be a complaint.
We've got to get the topsoil in next. Quite a lot of topsoil to fill up these beds.
Yep, well, happy to help.
It's out the front. Did it feel Scandi to you, Ruth, all of this?
Well, I think it'll be a little bit Scandi when it all comes together.
And I'm thinking we've got to echo that time over there
Oh, look at you,
See, look at
Echo. I'll tell you what, working with you most of the day, it feels like there's an echo. You know, these Deschampsias are a grass I really love. They're a hard-working grass. I use them a lot at home. But they're there design-wise to really sort of create movement and pick up on what's going on behind me as that field grows and moves through the season. And around it, we can use these lovely little sort of dark sages. They work really well and you pick up that scent from them. And again, they're not just sitting in one place, they're repeated all the way through the space.
Here you
In
are.
fact, you can dot them in. Look, there's a little gap there.
Lovely.
These beech will hang over and hide the wall once they've fully matured. I want to cut them into a crisp, modern cube shape.
So we've planted 6 of them, 2 at the top, 4 at the bottom, and now it's a case of picking a height, which I'm going to do by eye. We don't need to get the spirit level out on these, and just sort of running through them. And anything above that height, I'm going to snip off, and this is going to quickly bush out and make a really solid structure. And it's going to look fantastic. And the nice thing about beech, you get a wonderful fresh green in spring, and in the autumn you get those coppery tones coming through, which is going to work beautifully and really impose some geometry onto a garden like this to hold it together all year round.
Here you go, boss. Where do you want these? Thank you very much. I'm going to start that one over there and just work them across the area. So sometimes when you're putting plants together, not just isolating them, working them across the whole site, gives it quite a natural feel.
And then here we've got some, well, perennial plants that will just add lots of colour and interest through the summer. We've got foxgloves, 3 foxgloves there, which will just come up and they're going to link to some of the foxgloves in the rest of the garden nicely. And this lovely thalictrum. It's an amazing deep purple stem. And next to that, this allium, which looks great against that fence, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really pops out the colour.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So I think that's working really nicely. And then at the back, we're going to put in this climber, Trachelospermum jasminoides, but a sweet jasmine scent. And it will just fill this space with fragrance in the summer evening, which is beautiful. But it's also evergreen, but it's a well-behaved evergreen.
Fabulous.
This is a clementine. So have a incredible, isn't it? Smells really good.
It's brilliant, that does.
But I think as well, we won't just use them in this space. I think it'll be nice to just use them in the other pots as well.
Spread a bit of the scent.
Yeah.
So the thyme will just spread out and fill this space?
Yeah, just fill it nicely over the edges of the pavement. Look lovely.
Super, yeah, it's quite easy to maintain.
Yeah, definitely. We've created planting pockets, filled them with ornamental grasses, herbs, softened the boundaries with climbers and other plants. Put in beech hedges to add structure and help create that contemporary feel that they're after.
I've never really designed with anybody, or, you know, it's a...
You've enjoyed it though,
It's hard to do it by
You can see
committee.
that,
I know, I've really enjoyed it. Well, actually, I think it's all about the results.
I would put a decent day's graft in, and I think it's given them exactly what they wanted, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it works really, really nicely, actually. I mean, just lifting a few slabs, painting a bit of trellis.
Planting picks up what's going on in the field out there.
Well, I think that this transformation, you know, and I think a lot of people wouldn't be bold enough to get rid of their boundary and their little block wall and just open it out to that view. I mean, and they're getting married, and I think this is a lovely wedding present for them, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
They look amazing, how they've been put together.
Yeah, they contrast really nice, actually.
We were incredibly lucky to not only have 1 Chelsea Flower Show winner, but 2. They created an amazing design for us.
And they've taught us a lot as well.
Exactly.
And me especially.
Yeah. That view is just absolutely incredible.
I love it.
What's so good about that is that Adam and Joe have helped them realise what they want from their garden rather than impose a design. I've got a tray of Cerinthe. Now is a really good time to plant tender annuals. And it's a time of change here in the Jewel Garden and in many gardens, because all the early flowering plants that come to their peak round about the middle of June are now either on the wane or are over. So I'm literally just going to fill gaps. And so in a few weeks' time, you won't see any bare soil, and we'll just have lots and lots of colour. This is a job that I spread out over a few weeks, starting with the larger plants and then gradually filling up all the spaces. So by the end of the first week of July, it's all done, and very quickly the garden takes on a whole fresh new palette. But here are some jobs for you to spread over your weekend. Now is a good time to take cuttings from tender perennials. Choose nice straight growth without a flower or bud and cut just below a pair of leaves. Remove all the remaining foliage except for a small pair of leaves at the top. Then put the stems into either a very gritty compost or even pure perlite. Place them somewhere warm, water them, and you'll find that they will root very quickly. Although it's not looking like being a very good year for apples, trees are now producing clusters of fruit, and these should be thinned to 2 fruits per cluster or spur. This will result in better quality, better size, and healthier apples. Although many roses are still at their very best, the early flowering species roses, like Rosa cantabrigiensis, have finished flowering and now can be pruned. In fact, all species roses are best pruned immediately after flowering. You can take old growth right back to the ground. But remember, next year's flowers are produced on this summer's growth. We may have had a really wet June, but the garden is still looking great. The delphiniums are as blue as ever. The Nautia macedonica, this lovely burgundy-coloured scabious, is better than I've ever known it. And the poppies, which are self-sown and pop up all over the garden, continue to delight with the range and intensity of their fragile but powerful colour. But that's it for today. I'll be back, of course, next week, but not at the normal time. We are on an hour later at 9:30. So join me then. Bye-bye.